Yo.
I'm on your side.
Yeah, who set this thing up?
Sorry.
All right. Hey, welcome to the Backpack Show. We are both on location. Carrie's, I think, in the southern hemispheres. I'm over in the west. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. Carrie, we got Peter Goldwasser on the show. What's going on with that?
We are going to talk about Together for Safer Roads, which is an NGO that's working to eliminate fleet truck fatalities and injuries. He can talk more about that.
Fatalities. Say that 10 times fast.
No, you can't make me.
Speaking of weird things about eliminating fatalities, I don't know how this gets decided or not, but evidently Scottsdale, Arizona is very heavy on the Waymo vehicles. And I've got to figure Peter's got some thoughts on that. So let's ask some questions.
Hi, everyone. Tim Kitzer from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Kerry Gargone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show.
So we've never talked about this topic on the show before, but fleet, like big truck fleet safety management and technology.
This is your fault because I sure didn't pick the topic this time, but I was like, oh, that's cool.
I'm always interested in learning about things I know nothing about. So,
right. Well, I know I have a million questions. So, hi, Chloe.
Thanks some sponsors first, but if you're wondering kind of like what fleet safety management
who even makes this show?
Stop it.
You know who sponsors this thing? StreamYard. Don't know why. You can make a show just like this using this technology. We're making this show on StreamYard. You just gather up a bunch of ducks, interview them, and you're done. SeaBrogan.net/StreamYard. I don't think you get any discount, just buy the damn software.
I think you maybe get a longer trial.
Oh yeah, probably a longer trial. Mm-hmm. But that is, you know what you get when you get a longer trial? You're a procrastinating bunch of boobs, and you just don't actually do your thing.
That's probably true.
So just do your damn thing. Okay, let's get Peter. He's got a handsome beard, Peter. So anybody with a beard kind of gets an immediate plus.
So, hi, Peter. Global fleet trucking safety.
Hello. Yes.
Not something we've discussed on the show before. We've had people who make art out of felt. We've had a dictionary editor who specializes in profanity.
A lady who wanders around the bottom of the Thames picking out old crap from, old things. Peter, this is I'm pretty sure you weren't playing with your Matchbox trucks when you were 5 and thought, you know what I think I'll do is I'll teach fleets how to change like the curtains in the cabin and stuff like that. Like, how the heck did this start?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. That's a good question. Not at all. My background, originally a human rights attorney by training, and most of my career has sort of been at the intersection of public-private partnerships. Worked for the former mayor of Bloomberg for a long time as his chief program officer, running initiatives on anti-sex trafficking, transportation, education. Ran my own firm for a bit, which was helping companies figure out how to do good in the world and what does that mean and how do you sort of close the gap between the moral and market imperative.
So you went from trafficking to traffic?
Yes, that could be said, but there's some connections there. But I think the one consistency throughout it has been this idea of public-private partnerships and how do you bring lots of different people together? How do you bring the private sector together and leverage their insights and resources and knowledge to make a little bit of good in the world? And certainly road safety and crashes, it's one of the leading causes of deaths and injuries around the world. It's something that is ubiquitous and universal, regardless of what country you're in. It's a health epidemic. And so when you think about, there's a lot of organizations in the world that work on road safety. What I think is unique about Together for Safer Roads, TSR for short, is that their whole theory of change, their business model, for lack of a better word, is how do you leverage some of the largest fleets in the world, their expertise, their knowledge, both their resources, both human capital, both financial, and then our other members are some of the leading software, hardware companies, and how do you work with them so that you can help smaller fleets, you can help cities, and ultimately you can make communities safer for everybody, whether you're crossing the road to go to the dentist, whether you're going shopping, whether you're driving across the interstate. And there's lots of tried and true methods. And so TSR was formed about 11 years ago alongside the UN by a variety of very large international companies. Essentially, they have a role to play in it. They're operating these fleets. They are providing the hardware and software and technology. And so both for a mixture of reasons that they're involved in it, that they want to do good, that they want to figure out latest interventions, they form the organization. And so I took over in November, so it's been just about a year.
So then the goal, at least what it says, is Vision Zero, the total elimination of traffic fatalities and severe injuries. That is ambitious.
It is ambitious. I think that, it's having a North Star, right, is always, I think, important. And Vision Zero is not a concept that we came up with. It originated a bunch of years ago, I think in Sweden. But there's this idea that, you guys know this, language matters, right? And often we talk about things as accidents, but a lot of it's not an accident. Like an overwhelming percentage of crashes are not. It's because someone was doing something wrong, that they were distracted, they were breaking the law, they were speeding.
They
They were
say that in the movie Hot Fuzz, that they
Yeah,
don't call them accidents, they call them traffic collisions
yeah,
because
collisions, crashes, and so we know through like a safe systems approach, right? There's a lot of specific interventions and actions and trainings and things that you can do, best practices to help begin to turn the tide. So Vision Zero is this idea of this is possible. This is where we want to go to. What gets measured gets done. My old Boston City Hall, Bloomberg used to say that, and so the organization works on a lot of different underlying issues, and then we do so in sort of very strategic, organized ways where we test different technologies. We lean deep into specific topics. We work with cities, we work with smaller fleets, larger fleets, and we can talk about like specific programs and stuff that we do.
Yes. So I have a question or two about that, because what I'm thinking is, I can't imagine you going to, I don't know, Mercedes and saying, hey, look, I know a thing. I work with some people who know some things. You're going to have to change like the canopy in your cabin or whatever. It's not really good. Like your guy can't see that back behind him, blah, blah, blah. That sounds daunting to me. And I mean, you've done sex trafficking and things like that, prevention of.
he hasn't done it.
You are,
Done it, but
it is you, but like you've covered fairly, chewy kinds of hardworking things, but I almost feel it would even be harder to convince some kind of manufacturer of vehicles to make the changes you want them to make. Do you do that by getting the fleet requests to make those kind of edits? Like New York needs 190 trash trucks, and you convince them that through that, or how's that work?
That's a great question. Yeah. So, and I'll use a specific program that we do. And so we work on the issue of direct vision, which is just a fancy way of saying blind zones, right? And I'm sure you all have sort of seen some of those pictures where you can have like 37 small little kids in front of a truck, and literally the driver won't be able to see them because of the hood of the truck, right? So there's a lot of different ways to address that.
Yeah, get teachers to stop teaching kindergarten right in front of big trucks.
Yes, I think that is a fair, that's probably one way to do it as well. But so so Transport for London out of London a couple years ago sort of were pioneers in this idea of let's make a direct vision rating system that essentially applies stars, 1 through 5 stars, to all big trucks that are going to come into downtown London. And you can't come in there unless you get a certain amount of rating. That didn't exist in North America. And so about 18 months ago, working with our member partners, the fleets, with cities, with a variety of different experts, with Transport for London, with the US DOT, with Boston and New York and some other folks, we actually created North America's first ever direct vision rating system. And so it's a little bit of a kit. I wish I had it here, but we mail it out to folks. It has collapsible cones, measuring tape, and within a half an hour, you're able to quickly measure from the driver in the front and the side how good or bad the vision is, how many people you can or can't see at what distances. Now, what's the importance of that? Well, they can very quickly say, out of my 100 vehicles, 50% get 2 stars, pretty terrible. 20% get 3 stars. What am I at? 70%? 30% get 4 or 5 stars. So this information then empowers them to turn around to, and this gets to your question, Chris, here, is we know that these vehicles that provide superior vision exist. They're just not particularly predominant in North American markets. But if our organization, really one of the big goals is to help empower the Anheuser-Busch's or the PepsiCo's or the UPSs, who are all members, to then be able to turn around to the OEMs and manufacturers and say, not because it's necessarily just the right thing to do, right? Like at the end of the day, the practical reality is there's a lot of good things you could do, but the world's more complicated. So how can we help our members apply pressure, political, economic, social pressure to the OEMs and the manufacturers? Say, listen, we buy a lot of your cars. We buy a lot of your stuff. We want them here. There's a demand here. Why isn't this the case? And so that's sort of a concrete example, to answer your question of how it actually happens. How does it unfold? And kind of to go back to what I was saying in the beginning, how do you close the gap between the moral and market imperative? And so that's always been how I've approached this work of public-private partnerships and philanthropy, right? Success is defined differently by different folks, but what's the ROI? And so for members that come on to Together for Safer Roads, I know that each member is going to have a different reason why they're doing it. And it's our challenge to figure out, at the end of the day, they're doing it because they want to live in a world that's safer. But then in the practicalities of that is, well, I also need this, and I need that, and I need this. And so one of them is can we help you increase the percentage and increase the safety of your fleets by doing this?
So I have to think part of the initiative is driver training. So technology plays a big role, but also, drivers are on the road for a long time. Sometimes they get tired, sometimes they get
Yeah.
distracted. So what kinds of driver trainings do you provide? Or do you encourage others to provide? I don't know how it'll work.
Yeah. So we talk about, right, that the cab is actually their office, right? Like I sit here in my nice kitchen or living room, right? It's cozy. I've got a good chair, but like, it's important to realize that the drivers for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours are sitting there in the cab of the truck. And so understanding the design of the truck, understanding the integration of technology, you can have the best technology in the world, but if it's not introduced, there's a lot of stuff around in-cab camera technology, right? Cameras that are pointing inwards and then outwards. And they can do a lot of great stuff. They can really improve safety. They can provide excellence around training and becoming a better driver. But there's also a lot of legitimate privacy concerns from drivers. And, is somebody spying on me? Why is it there? Is it to get me in trouble? And so there's, around behavior training and sort of management training, how do you introduce it? And so that's really critical. So we work with our fleet members and others around what are the best ways to introduce new technology, because you can have the best technology in the world, but if it's not accepted, then it's not going to be used. It's not going to be as effective. We have a program called Focus on Fleet Safety, which was developed by all of our different experts, the SMEs from our members, and it's an 8 to 12 week curriculum that essentially helps fleets at the very large level create cultures of safety. And it looks at technology, it looks at training and leadership, and it looks at overall, how do you begin to value safety? So it's not a driver training course in terms of this is how you operate your vehicle, it's sort of one level up. And so we've run cohorts across the country with 10 or 12 different fleets, and it's specifically geared towards small and mid-sized fleets. So these are your fleets that are 88% of the fleets are small and mid-sized out there. And so that means, under 200. And a lot of these fleets don't necessarily have the resources to have a head of safety or to have a comprehensive training program. So we sort of fill in the void there based on the insights and expertise of our members who do have the resources to have this work.
Peter, on the other side of this too, you have the Safer Cities program initiative, which is interesting. I mean, I just saw something the other day saying that Waze, the driving tool, is going to start showing you trouble spots on roads and things like that. Like, there's been about 106 accidents on this curve and things like that. And that's an already available consumer product. I have to know that, your program's a lot more robust than that, but how do people respond to that? I mean, I was looking at the team that you work with Alex, and that, you're going into places and saying, look, it'd be a lot better if you sort of like fix this curve on this highway, because it seems like a truck flies off it every 4 days. Again, just sounds like a heavy lift, like a hard fight. How do you get that to happen?
Yeah, and so that's it. It's interesting. So as an organization, we don't actually do. My goal, as a leader here in this and for the organization, is to say, like, what's our special sauce and where can we make the most difference? And so we don't necessarily do as much. We have in the past, but we don't do as much on the ground, neighborhood by neighborhood interventions, which is really important critical work around how can we introduce different traffic calming, let's say on these 2 blocks in Park Slope, Brooklyn, where I live. Can we eliminate some parking spots around the corners, and so you increase the available vision for trucks, for cars turning? Can you put speed cameras in? Can you, whatever it may be? That is excellent work, but it's not work that we're really best suited for it, to be totally frank, right? And I think it's important. There's so many organizations out there, but you got to figure out what you do best, and how you can leverage that. And so the place that we sit at really is, let's say, near miss technology. And so we've done a lot of work around how do you set up cameras, working with cities to collect at a macro level millions and millions of data points around near miss technology, near miss crashes. And why that is important is, if you can understand where things almost happened, then you can begin to get insights and develop interventions and changes at a large scale to, well, maybe this whole area needs to be redesigned, or maybe we need to do this or change that or create this training. And so that's kind of the sweet spot that we sit in. But your question, the idea of like, how do you work with people, right? That's also there. And it's complicated. It's at the heart of public-private partnerships. It's trust. It's understanding the definitions of success and what that means. I've had clients and organizations and stuff where, at the end of the day, they need a press conference and they need to have this and this picture to go into the annual report. That's fine. Or they need to help on a communications front, or they want to be able to help on a legislative or regulatory front. And so I think, our work is really based on a partnership model, and partnership means a give and a take.
So Dean and I had the same question, actually. I was just thinking about the truck of the future, and I saw Dean say, how do self-driving vehicles play into all this? I want to believe it'll make the roads safer in about 10 years when it's the standard. I mean, it would almost have to, right? Because frankly, we all suck at driving sometimes.
I was never allowed to say that word sucks growing up. My mom she's like, use a different one.
My mom was like, frick is a swear. I was like, okay.
But now I've passed it on to my daughter, to her chagrin. So I think autonomy is a really interesting question. And have you guys all seen that famous poster, right, where there's a block on a city and you've got a bus and you've got 4 cars and walkers and bicyclists. And the point of it is it's all about geometry and how many people does each mode of transport move, taking up the same amount of space. And so at the end of the day, an autonomous vehicle, whether it's, whether it's autonomous or electric or ICE or driven, traditional combustion engine or driven by someone or not, one of the challenges is they just don't move enough people, right? The amount of people that can fit in a bus versus 2 cars that take up the same length is maybe 8 people versus 75 people. So the challenge with, what problem are you solving for with autonomy, and how do you best introduce it? Are you talking about autonomous buses on a fixed route between 2 spots? Are you looking at autonomy to go into transit deserts to then connect to mass transportation? Obviously, there was a lot of developments the last couple of weeks with Cruise, right? And being pulled off the road and stuff. So it's a challenge. We don't work so much in the autonomous space. There's so much other stuff to be doing, whether it is blind zones, whether it's standardization of safety instruments like seatbelts, whether it is our Truck of the Future program, right, which is applying 360-degree cameras to trucks. That's super fascinating, actually, right? And that's something that we're going to be building on. So you've got the vision problem that we spoke about, right? Direct vision and blind zones.
Right.
Well, as an organization, from a theory of change perspective, we said, listen, the North Star, again, of the future is we want trucks coming off the line to be designed fundamentally better, to have that flat front with more glass, the driver's lower, it's a more comfortable experience, it's easier to get into, to go back to the idea of this is their workspace, it's less stressful. They did these amazing surveys in London where they had all these drivers, and they looked at these newfangled trucks, and they're like, this is bullshit, I don't want to work in this shit. And then after the experience, they're like, this was amazing. It's a really hard job driving. It was less stressful. I didn't have to worry about, I could see the mom or the kid or the grandmother out in the street much more easier, and that made my job a much nicer thing. And so the North Star, the long-term change is let's make sure the vehicles are designed from the beginning to provide superior vision. But what about the millions of trucks on the road right now, right? And so that's where our Truck of the Future program comes on, where we're in New York City, and then in Mexico City with our partner AB InBev and our partner Vision Track, who provides the cameras. We've put the cameras on the truck so the drivers can actually be able to see 360 all around pedestrians, motorcyclists, and other vulnerable road users. And so you're addressing the issue right now of how do we make the current truck safer? And then you're also, from an organizational perspective, thinking how do we advocate and help make sure that the trucks themselves.
There's a lot to it. I mean, you mentioned Cruise, and I'm pretty sure not many people know the storyline that we're referring to, but it turns out at least a few self-driving cars did a lot less quality self-driving, and a few people got bumped around, and they sort of did their own version of the trolley problem where they, picked some amount of people to hit, which is, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't have to be specific or correct at this, Peter. But it's at least alleged, because that's probably good to say, that, some self-driving cars didn't drive themselves very well. But I like your point too. Your point is that's not really what I do.
I mean, it all depends. If you're the person on the track that didn't get hit, you're like, that thing's doing great.
Well, true.
I think there's got to be a role for, it's sort of always about what's the problem you're solving for, who's the end user. There's certainly a role for autonomy in transportation. I think it's a matter of figuring out what's the highest and best use. I personally, the many, many, many millions of billions of dollars that are spent in research around autonomous vehicles, where else could it's not a zero-sum game. And so where else could some of those resources be going?
You're also facing some resistance, I would think, from the fleet drivers who are afraid they're going to be replaced.
Sure.
Even though really we're looking for like kind of assisted driving as opposed to totally autonomous in a lot of cases. But there's that fear of their job. So it makes them more resistant to solutions that might otherwise help make the road safer.
That is well said. And then, also what's the appropriate, is it long haul trucking across the country where autonomy could provide a lot of potential benefits, both from the driver perspective, from a fuel perspective, from a finance perspective, from a safety perspective, versus in a dense urban environment. So I
Peter,
think
is that a puppy? Did I hear a puppy?
That is a puppy. That could be a separate show. My journey of loving
puppies are welcome on the show. Puppies and neighbors and spouses and snacks and everything.
He is very cute. Ollie, we got him maybe about 2 years ago. It was good. And
Can he drive?
I wasn't on board. He cannot drive, but he does like to go in the car.
Good to know. So even just now, I was researching, I was trying to grab a quick video to go with our talk about, 360-degree truck vision. It is fascinating, the variety of commercially available products in that world, and sort of the assumptions that you can already see that people are making. Like one of the companies, they had like a little 7-inch in-dash monitor, or on-dash monitor to be more correct. And all I thought the minute I saw that was, oh, great. So focus this person's field of vision down to 7 inches to try to look at this field of view. Like it might be nicer to have a slightly better heads-up display kind of version of this info. Plus, and I imagine you even think about this a little bit in the Truck of the Future, ambient stuff. Because why in the world would we, require human ocular connection to parse this info when there's a lot of ambient signaling we could get that would tell us the same things?
It is, yeah. It's very interesting. In our pilots, we're learning. That's the point of the pilot, right? Like it's you learn different specificity around how the technology is being applied in the real world, and we're doing it both with public sector fleets with New York, and then private sector fleets with Anheuser-Busch in Mexico City, and both of those are really critical. But one of the things that we're hearing and learning is just the placement of the cameras depending on the class of vehicle. And so sanitation trucks require the cameras to be placed in different areas because of how the truck works than delivery trucks in the beverage industry in terms of how they're using forklifts and stuff to put the stuff in. Or the noise, right? Like is it a diesel garbage truck versus an electric truck versus what neighborhood? Mexico City versus New York, they're all different. And that's kind of the fun stuff, right? Where you begin to really see the technology in real time. And again, technology itself won't solve the problem. Right. And so a lot of our work is around creating environments for pilots where everybody can learn, and a lot of that is the human element of it, right? To make these things successful, to sort of get the buy-in, to understand why we're doing this at the end of the day. That's the most important thing. Like, we exist as an entity to make the roads safer, and more specifically, help make fleets, the millions and millions of drivers and large vehicles that are out there every day driving hundreds of millions of miles around the world. And so it's a big problem. It's a big responsibility, but we can make change. We can increase the safety of that, and then ultimately reduce crashes and save lives and and reduce injuries.
I've learned a lot today, Peter. I learned that Dean has a foul mouth, apparently.
Speaking of such matters.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
I mean, why wouldn't we give it to Dean for his 7 versions of the
Yes.
of AI? So, Dean, you have just won yourself an entirely free Apple. Go right into any old store, take the one you like, and get out.
You know what? This time of year, make it into a caramel apple. You can get it.
You guys should do like wait, don't tell me, right? Where you win your voice on the answering machine.
Of the answering machine.
But it used to be the answering machine, right? Now they changed to like your
your voicemail or whatever. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. My dad's first answering machine message back when it really was new was like, "I've provided this recorder to take your request." Like, they really might not know.
Oh my gosh.
That it wasn't him. Was
my sister and I used to battle over whose voice would be on, because we had one phone line and she didn't. You know, the 13-year-old boy humor was not the same as the 16-year-old girl. And I think I embarrassed her quite a lot.
I would have gone with Mo Rocca.
Sorry.
A grape guy. Okay, listen, what goes in your backpack is a question we've asked every single guest that we've ever had on here. We've had Clowns Without Borders. It was an avocado was the answer. And
that graphic's so old, I'm not even on the bag tag.
Oh, that's true. I didn't even notice that.
The logo is like a little bag.
Well, hey, I don't know. Convince Dan to make me some new graphics. I'm going to do it. All right. So, Peter Goldwasser, we need to ask you the question. What kind of thing would go in your backpack? It would be something physical or something metaphorical. Carrie, what's a physical thing someone could throw in a backpack?
Ooh, an extra set of teeth. DJ Cumberbund from YouTube.
Yes.
An extra set of teeth. Mm-hmm.
And something metaphorical? I don't know. Hope for the future? Something like that? What do you think?
Oh, kindness. Ariel Helvetica, burlesque performer, said kindness.
Kindness.
I can give you 2. On the physical side, it is 100%. I have a model, ABR. I'll always be ready. So it has to be sneakers.
For your run.
For my running. Sneakers is sort of like, running is my religion. It makes me happy. It brings me peace. It's where some of my best ideas have happened. And I never want to find myself in a place where I could have gone for a run, but didn't have my sneakers. And so sneakers, I would say. And then on the other side, I think sort of relentless optimism. It's always, that's a trait that I think has served me well, and sort of figuring out, well, what's next? How can we move forward, make some progress? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Well, here's hoping. See, that was my relentless optimism joke. All right. Well, I can say one thing about this all is that it did sort of dawn on me, because you mentioned about going for a run earlier.
Your grandmother was a truck driver?
My grandmother swore like a truck driver. It did dawn on me that like some of this could be just like.
She swore like Dean.
Peter's been in the bike lane one too many times, and there's a truck mirror gets his elbow, and he says, "Hey, listen up, punk." And I will tell you that my grandmother had the best French Canadian swear phrase for that. It's.
That's just a shame the mic was on.